Hey everybody, welcome to Example of Play, then for Strategy, Tactics, and more. Today I'm excited to be playing the demo for Task Force Admiral, the game that sees you commanding Pacific forces in World War II and dropping bombs on carriers. Very nice attack run right there. This demo is available right now. You can play it yourself, but I've spent a little time with it, had some fun, and I figured I'd make a quick video here just to show you what it's got on offer and a little brief tutorial to kind of get you up to speed if you want to play it yourself. So let's jump back to the main menu here. We'll see what the game has on offer, and then we'll get you back into action like this, taking out the Japanese fleet during this battle. All right, so we're back at the main menu. We will just kind of look over what the demo has on offer. So the demo is out to promote the Kickstarter, which is available right now. If you want to get like a boxed set of the game, it looks pretty cool. It has like everything you'd expect from like a 90s simulation release with a big manual, a bunch of physical goodies included in the box for you. But looking at the demo here, obviously it's going to be limited. It is a demo of the beta version of the game. So everything in this build is not complete by a long shot. There's lots of features to come, lots of improvements to be made, but it does give you a chance to play the game if you've been looking forward to it. I certainly have, especially after playing Sea Power a few months ago, which is like the modern combat version of this, or like the Cold War, more modern version of this kind of gameplay. This takes us back to World War II in the Pacific for some epic clashes of that era. So a few things are grayed out. Naval Academy, so obviously later there'll probably be full tutorial missions and stuff, but for today you've got me kind of stepping you through the basics. You can come down in here and hit manual, and that will give you a PDF. It's like 46 pages long that explains everything, which I recommend you look at yourself to get all the details, but I've looked through it, and so I'll give you kind of the quick and dirty version to get you up and running. If you go to single scenario, that gives you a little preview of what would be in the full game. So it's mostly about 1942 with a little bit of 41, and then I'm sure eventually we'll see later battles as well. But looking through the different sets of battles, kind of what's on offer here, and looks like there's kind of a historical and hypothetical mixture of every battle, of all the notable events, or at least a bunch of hypotheticals and also a lot of historical ones too. And so the one we get is of Cranes and Patriots, based on May 8th, the fighting around parts of the Battle of the Coral Sea, which is a historical engagement. But there's also some early fights. Then, of course, Midway being a big part of this game focus, and then Watchtower also in there, giving us some more of the battles. And then you come down here and you'll get kind of a rating of complexity, difficulty, more of that to come, I'm sure, in the full version. But if we step back, there's also this battle generator, lets you make just kind of a quick battle. You can choose whether you have 1 or 2 destroyers, kind of difficulty level. If the enemy has up to 3 destroyers, which would be pretty challenging, I think. So if you want, you can just generate more battles besides the scenario that comes with it. There's a museum here, which I haven't really looked at yet, but it lets you go in and look at 3D models of everything, different ships from the game, which I don't know if this includes everything yet, or probably just like what's in the demo build right now, plus a few more. These seaplanes, the manual mentions that they'll be in the final version of the scenario, but in this demo build, you don't actually, guys. And then you can come here to this fleet defense. It's like, we might jump into it later, but it's like their prototype. They're going to add, besides the strategic layer where you're controlling everything as if you were the admiral, or if you were playing like a strategy game, depending on how you have the difficulty set, you can be more or less immersive and realistic about it. But also, eventually, I think in the full version of the game, you'll be able to take hands-on control of a lot of different units like fighters or anti-aircraft guns, and pilot them yourself and control them during the battle if you want to. And if you click that fleet defense, it basically gives you like a little dogfight that's, I don't know, hard to control with the mouse. It also works with like an Xbox or a similar controller, but that's in there if you want to play around with it. But we will just go to single scenario, and then we'll load up the of Cranes and Patriots scenario. When you start the scenario, you'll be here. on the bridge where you can't see a whole lot really. This is kind of the immersive side of the game, which my understanding is if you want to, you can play the whole game basically from here, where you can't really see much other than what you know here on your maps and stuff, or peeking outside and like looking in first person around your ship from the tower. And that's how you have to play the whole battle, as if you were the admiral, only seeing things from that point of view. But we'll be playing with the broader spectrum of being able to look at the maps and all of that. So this battle, there is, if we double click on the map here, we can look at it. For this battle, there is a briefing it'll give you at the beginning, but the simple version is we've got roughly 2 equally sized forces ready to engage in combat. Each side has 2 carriers, and then we can see our order of battle here. We got the 2 carriers, Yorktown and Lexington, and then we have a variety of destroyers and cruisers with us. And just like historically, for this battle, the cruisers and destroyers mostly are just going to serve an anti-aircraft role and not really directly engage the enemy ships, most likely. That was kind of the interesting thing of this era, is that there are lots of battles in the Pacific where surface ships do get in close and fight with each other, and I'm sure we'll see plenty of those in the full version of this game. But this scenario is one of those where most of the damage is going to be done by aircraft, and the surface ships might not ever fire a shot at each other. It's just going to be about finding their fleet and engaging it with aircraft and taking it out, and hoping that they don't find us at the same time. Okay, so my goal here is not necessarily to try to um, teach you everything very thoroughly, because this is a demo. This is the beta version. Everything's subject to change, and it's something that you should be able to get into. And my goal is to get you in so you can just play around with it and not be too confused about all the buttons and all the options, because there's a lot of stuff. But really, you can get in and play without too much effort. Just learning where the important stuff is, and then you can figure out the details on your own. So if we want to just look at the UI real quick, up here we got buttons. These give us some different views and some different tools that we'll need. We'll go through all those in a minute. Over here we have the clock, so it's 7 o'clock, or it's 7 in the morning after midnight. So it's very early. It's May 8th. We have a message log here. There's no messages yet. You can close it, and this little thing will flash whenever new messages come up. That'll tell you like events like aircraft flights taking off and stuff like that. And then down here at the bottom, we can choose, if we had multiple task forces, we could choose to switch between them, but we're just dealing with Task Force 17 right here. And then this is how you can speed up time. So you can pause the game, or you can press P to do that, or click there. You can have it going. It starts in real time, so it's one to one. But obviously, we'll want to speed it up to get to the action later, which you do by just clicking here, and you'll see this speeds up here the time scale. And you can speed it up quite a bit if you want, and you'll see the clock starts ticking a lot faster. This right here, where it says 1 hour, 4 hour, 24 hour, what that does, if you click it, is it changes the scale of this little line across the bottom. So once we start queuing up orders for aircraft, we'll see down here, it'll show their schedule, and it'll show the schedule of whatever carrier you have selected here, because the flight ops get fairly complicated. The system will kind of take care of a lot of it for you, but you want to be cognizant of what's going on down here. So once we order like a flight to take off, we'll be able to see down here like when it's going to take off, when stuff's coming back, things like that. How our air operations are looking, because if we get them very cluttered, it makes a mess on the flight deck. So you just want to be able to visualize it here, what's going on. Now over here we have strike, search, and scramble, and those are ways to get our aircraft in the air. So if we click strike, we can form a strike package, which we'll come back to later. Search is to set up a search zone, and then scramble we won't click. I'm not sure if it immediately happens if you click it, but that scrambles basically every available fighter, every available aircraft into the air to go fight the enemy. So you don't want to click that unless it's a true emergency, because that will mess up everything on your schedule that we talked about. Now up here, we'll just go through these real quick. So strategic map, that's where we are right now. And that's going to be your useful information for planning and seeing the big picture. 3D lets you switch and see things in the 3D world, but given that it is 10 in the morning, 1000 in the morning, There's nothing to see because it's dark out there. The fleet board is useful. Fleet board is where we can set up several different things. So we can see the formation of our task force. So we got carriers in the middle, and then the cruisers out around it, and the destroyers in a ring outside of that. And so you can come in here and edit how this arrangement's set up. You don't really need to. The default setting's fine for this battle. But if you wanted to, you can come in here. You can have different preset formations. If you click this edit preset, so you can change where they're at. You can move the ships around or to set them on these like rings to spread them out evenly. So you can play around with that if you want to. You don't really need to do anything with it right now, so we won't go into it too much, but that's how you could set up different formations for your fleet depending on the situation. If we hit this fleet information, it just gives us kind of a rundown of how many ships and aircraft we have in general. We don't really need that right now. Defensive air ops. Now this is going to be important. So the defensive air ops screen is really important. So we'll spend a little time here because this is how you're going to set up your combat air patrol or your CAP. These are the aircraft that the fighters that you're sending up to patrol the air and watch out for enemy aircraft approaching your fleet and engage and intercept them, so that you always have a few aircraft up and running at all times, ready to fight off enemy attacks. Obviously, very important for a carrier battle. If you don't have anybody up and ready to fight and some enemy fighters show up, they could be attacking before you could get any of your fighters up to intercept them. Now to create one, we just click right there. As you can see, there's some other types of patrols, but they're not in the demo yet. So eventually there'll be like inner air patrol zone, outer air patrol zone, outer picket station. These will let you create more elaborate patrol schemes later on, but for our purposes and right now, the only thing available is the combat air patrol, which is pretty basic and straightforward. There's several options to pick here, so we can pick which carrier that they're coming from. We'll just leave it on the Yorktown. Which type of fighters going up. Right now we just have the one, the Wildcat, and then the patrol strength. So what you set here is how many aircraft go up at a time, but you're going to be committing double that to your total for this patrol. So basically, if we send up 3, then there's 3 more waiting that are reserved to replace them whenever they run out of fuel and come back. And then also it tells you it's going to be about an hour and a half on each rotation, and then they'll come back and swap off. And then here, the patrol altitude, you set how high you want them to be. Obviously, if they're higher up, they can see further, but also if there's cloud cover, they might not be able to see down below the clouds. That's all just going to depend on what the enemy's doing. But the default's 13,000. If we come over here, we can set where we want the patrol to go. So we can move the corners of the square that appear. Now the aircraft, they don't patrol within the zone that you set up. They're going to patrol this outer perimeter. So wherever you set these lines up, the line is what the aircraft are going to follow while they're patrolling. So you might set up a big box around the whole force, so they're just looping around the whole thing. But you might instead, the manual suggests, it doesn't suggest too much strategy here of the best way to do this, but it does just suggest a few options. You could set like a screen in one side of your fleet. So maybe instead of having one big patrol go up, you've got multiple smaller ones that are screening the force in different directions, so that you always have some aircraft present on this side of the fleet, versus if you set it up like this, maybe the enemy comes from over here and your fighters are all the way over there and they've got to fly all the way across. Plus they just don't see them for that much longer. And then up here, you'll want to note the scale. So if we zoom out, the scale, even though the circle stays the same size, it's zoomed way out. So setting it up here like that is sending them out way, way, way further than if we're zoomed in. Now that's like off the whole map. And again, I don't have advice to give you on what the best distance is to set up your patrols. It's probably just going to depend. Whenever I played it the first couple times, I just set it up not too far out, and it worked out okay. But that might not be the right call. It just depends. More to learn as we play the game. Once you've got it set up how you like it, we'll just say accept. And now that mission is planned. But one thing to note is that they won't take off right away right now because it's the middle of the night, and none of the air operations will take off until 6 a.m., at least in this demo. And then lastly on this screen, there is the fighter direction section. So right now we don't have anything here because no aircraft are in the air just yet. No threats have been identified. But this is basically, think of it as like the Pacific War version of like the AWACS controller, or the officer back at base directing your aircraft in the air towards threats. So basically, once the mission's going and we have aircraft up, we'll see our patrols will be here, and we'll see the enemy threats there, and then we'll be able to tell them, hey, I want this patrol go after this threat. However, you don't have to micromanage that. You can just leave this FDO in charge checked, and that's basically the AI. That's the flight direction officer, and their whole job is to do that, to match up assets with threats and kind of micromanage the actual combat. So for your first playthrough, I would just leave that checked. But if you uncheck it, you get these options here, and then you can go in there and micromanage where you want your aircraft to go and what targets you want them to engage individually. But I would just leave that checked, let the AI do that for you until you learn the rest of the systems. Next, we'll come back up here and go from fleet defense to flight deck. Now, there's going to be a lot of information here. You don't necessarily need to know all of it, but especially for this scenario where it's pretty short and probably you're just going to send all your aircraft up for a one-way mission, not one way in that they won't come back, but that you're going to send them all off and you're either going to win or lose pretty quick because just the nature of the scenario is that both carrier groups start off really close to each other and are pretty inevitable that you're going to find each other. However, for longer scenarios that are span multiple days, this screen is going to be really important, or just any longer drawn out battle. This gives you this first screen, the air plot. So this is a little diagram of the carrier and showing you where the aircraft on it are. This one is the Yorktown, so it has 3 elevators. They're all operational right now. We can see that the blue aircraft on here are the ones that have been tasked to do something. Those are the ones that we just assigned our cap to. So you can see there's 6 of the Wildcats up here are blue. So they've been assigned a mission. All the other aircraft have not. They're still white. And as we can see, some of them are up on the deck right now. And then the rest are down in the hangar underneath. If we just look here, we can see that it visualizes all that for you. If we hit deck timeline, now this is where the details, now you don't have to directly manage all this stuff, but it gives you a place to look and kind of see when things are going to happen. So we've set up that combat patrol. Like I mentioned, air ops won't start until 6 a.m. And so at 5:55, they're going to kind of start getting prepped. 3 aircraft for cap number 1. That's our mission we set up. 101, so the first flight of the first mission. And then at 6 o'clock, they'll launch. And then the next flight will get ready at 7:27. Then they'll launch, and then the first flight will land right after that at 7:36. So you can see here, it's all built into the schedule. And if we come down here, if we set it to 4 hours, it's not quite far enough out. If we set it to 24 hours, we can see we have some little icons down here. And this is showing us this is when these actions are happening with basically red up arrow. That's when planes are taking off. Purple down arrow when planes are landing. And of course, this is all scheduled, but it's not necessarily that is going to happen, because say later we set up, if we scramble a bunch of fighters, that could interrupt the schedule, and all this stuff gets thrown off. But it's pretty cool that here you can see all the missions you set up get planned out here. And so you can see like when your deck's going to be really busy versus when it's going to have time. If we look at missions, kind of same thing. We can see these are the cap. The 2 flights for cap number 1 are on the schedule here. How many total missions we have, how many sorties we have for the day. So they're going to take off and go. And then as we add more missions, this will get busier. And then squadrons, we can see what kind of aircraft squadrons we have on board. So on the Yorktown, we've got 2 dive bomber squadrons. One is VB and one is VS. They're meant to be kind of in the organization of the time, they're meant to be used as scouts, and then the VBs as the bombers primarily, but they're both capable of either mission. And then we have a squadron of fighters and a squadron of torpedo bombers. And then you can come over here, you can see what type of aircraft they are. The dive bomber squadrons are both the same, and then the fighter and the torpedo bombers, and then how many pilots we have, and how many aircraft we have. So, your number of pilots is separate from your number of aircraft, something to know for any longer battles and campaigns. And then down here, just kind of details on all those things. And the manual mentions that all this will be more detailed later. You'll be able to look at like your roster of your pilots and your aircraft and get more details on each individual one. But right now we just have the totals. And then the stores, this is not active in the demo, but this would show us like ammunition and fuel stores, stuff like that would be here, but we don't have to worry about it for this scenario. And then if we come back up here, so we were on flight deck. This next button is the squadron chart, but that's what we already looked at. And then the last button is binoculars. So this basically puts us in point of view, which depends on where you're at. Could be in the room here, or we can go outside and basically like we're on the flight deck looking around. But right now it's still the middle of the night, so you can't see anything. Let's change that up and let's get it to the morning. And before we do that though, let's give an order here on the strategic movement screen. So pretty simple. We have the only unit available right now, the Task Force 17. We right click. Now we can set a waypoint. If you add a waypoint, this first one is already on the map at the start of the scenario. If you can only edit the last waypoint in the chain right now. The manual says eventually that'll change. But right now, if we add one, then we can't do anything with this one. So we'll just demonstrate. If we right click on it, we can remove that one. Now our fleet's just waiting. We look at the map, kind of the only information we have going is that we're in the Coral Sea and the enemy carriers were estimated to be here a few hours ago at 9 o'clock, at 9 p.m., 2100 hours the day before. So about almost 4 hours ago, that's where they were, pretty close. So why not? We will go this way maybe. If we select that, we'll right click, say add waypoint, and then it just goes where you put it, but you can move it around. But if we add another waypoint, now you can't move that one around anymore. So just so you know. And then if we're looking at it, we can also set our speed that we want to be going towards it. So we could set like 20 knots. That's all going to depend on, of course, how fast your ships are. But you can set how fast you want them to go, and then it gives you an ETA of when you're expected to arrive there. Now from this screen, we can also give some other orders, which we might do before we get up to battle time. We want to plan ahead. This is not a game where you want to be doing stuff off the cuff. You want to plan things out ahead of time as much as you can, because it's modeling everything in one-to-one time until you speed it up. And as we saw looking at the chart, it takes time to get those aircraft ready to launch. And the more aircraft you're launching, the more time it's going to take to get them up, get them back down, all of that. We can also do some stuff here to show like radar range, anti-aircraft range, main battery range, stuff like that if we want to, but we won't worry about that right now. Now, what we should do now, we got our combat air patrol set and ready. They'll launch whenever it's time. And of course, you might want to launch more than one, but we'll just leave it at one for the demo here. If we hit search, we can create a new air search mission. So if we click that, pretty straightforward. It's going to show right now we can do Yorktown or Lexington. We'll change Lexington to 1. And then you can choose which aircraft you want to use for scouts. So we can use either some of our dive bombers, the SBD, or some of our torpedo bombers, the TBD. One of those squadrons as our scouts. You can see the torpedo bombers have a shorter range. They're going to go out. And then it's showing when they would take off because they're not going to take off until 6 a.m. That's why it's way out here. That's plotting out when they're going to take off, where they're going to go scout. So we'll keep it simple. We'll say we want them to scout back that way towards where we know the enemy position was. And then we say our patrol strength. So it starts at just 1. If we add more to it, basically it's going to be like a fan. They're going to go out to a certain distance and then come back along an arc. And then how high we want to be, default 13,000 again. And then we can shift the angle here or just click and drag it over here. You can also set like how far out we want them to go. Play around with it there or play around with it over here. And then also we can spread how wide we want it to be. which I'm not sure if you can do that by just clicking and dragging it. Unless there's something I'm missing, you have to do that over here. But the step line is basically how wide of an arc we're going to go for. Then you point it where you want them to go. And then they're going to take, you can also set the time you want them to take off. Right now it's defaulting to basically the earliest they could right after 6. So we'll just say accept on that. And then say if we wanted to create another one from Yorktown, searching out in front of us here, it would just be like that. Same concept. And then let's say if we wanted to, we could push it out an hour. They'll take off an hour later. And you see it moves up this line. And then one thing the manual mentions it doesn't go into great detail. Probably doesn't matter too much for this battle since it's pretty short. But when you send aircraft out on a really long mission like this, way out there, they are going and coming back based on where they expect the carrier to be. So if you change course if you change your plotted courses after you send these aircraft out, the game does kind of model that basically they're out of contact once they go so far out there. And so they could historically they had some kind of homing beacon, they could find their way back to the carriers, but it wasn't 100% reliable. So it's kind of an interesting note of that. Yeah, if you change up your fleet's course from what you have plotted after they take off, those guys in the aircraft, if they're way out here, they don't know that you've changed course and you're not going to be where you were planning to be originally, which is kind of interesting to note. But I think this highlights the how this whole era worked in terms of we're planning these missions that aren't going to take off for hours, and then where the fleet's going to be when you send them up. So you got to think about that too, of the enemy fleet. This is where we last spotted them. We don't know where they're going to be now. Even if we do spot them somewhere and they're way out here, by the time we get to them, they might have moved from here to there. So you got to kind of like anticipate those movements over long distances in time, which I think is pretty cool. Now, if we close that, we don't see that anymore. I'm not sure if there's a way to have that always be visible. But right now, if you close it now, we don't know. You got to kind of remember where you put those missions at, or you open the search thing back up and you can see it. And then building out the strike group, we'll do that. We'll see if we can find them, and then we'll build out a strike force and send them out. So let's speed time up, and then we'll get some aircraft in the air and get some daylight so we can see what's going on out there. Now, if we come to our strategic screen here, we can see that first little flight is up and flying around there. And we might bring back our order of battle here. So we can switch from fleets to now we got some units in the air. And this is showing us our 4 missions that we have plotted. So the cap 1 and 2. And then the and you have to click down through here to kind of see everything. But these guys are in the air. They're part of our first cap, so they're up. They're heading out to their first waypoint to then fly the box here. And if we want to, one thing I found with the demo is kind of fussing with the camera, trying to get selected. Sometimes it works good, sometimes it doesn't. One thing I forgot, if you hit space, now it'll make a little more sense. You can switch to this tactical view where we have sort of a simple 3D model of the battlefield. You can click and drag with the mouse to move around. And this is useful because it kind of lets you see where everything's at a little bit easier and cleaner versus looking at the strategic view where you're just seeing one icon representing the entire fleet, or the 3D where you're looking at like the realistic depiction, but it's hard to see where everything's at because it's not really marked. Space gives you this one where it's the nice in between of being able to visualize things in 3 dimensions, but also just the information you need clearly shown there. Anyway, so if we click here, we can see that they are there, and also we can see what they're doing right now. They're searching. They're on deck. The next cap, they won't go up for a while, so they're just waiting. And then our search flight, so these guys are all going to go out individually, so they're broken up, where these guys are in a flight of 3. These guys are all separate. They're on deck, not taking off yet. I don't know if there's an option to like expand these out a little faster. So we have Hamilton, he's taken off. flying off into the morning. And then if we speed up time, we can see, okay, we can see our search missions that they are heading out to scan that area. And then if we switch it to the other search mission, we see it plotted out there. So you can kind of click here on the order of battle to see the missions for each mission that you've set up, where the aircraft are, what they're doing, who's assigned, and then you can also see the plotted out course. Sorry, that was a little garbled there, but I think you get it. Now we'll speed up time a little bit more and see if we spot the enemy fleet, and then we'll do the last thing, which is building a strike package. So we'll just speed up time here. All right, so now we can see, yeah, search aircraft heading out. Oh, well, that didn't take too long. Now, before we jump into action, we'll note that we send them out, and then here we've lost contact with our aircraft, so we don't know exactly where they are. Which I think in the full version you'll be able to tweak the difficulty settings, and you'll probably be able to see them all the time on the map here. But if we're playing like more immersively, just like real life, you send these search planes out, you don't know exactly where they are, and so you just have to wait for them to contact you or come back. But fortunately for us, our search pattern here was on the money. We've spotted the enemy task force already. So I do say that you don't see them on the map here, but you can still select them here, and you can go zoom in on them and see them flying, even though they don't show up on the actual map here, which is kind of a quirk of the system right now. I'm sure that'll all be adjusted later with more updates and more comprehensive difficulty settings. But anyway, so that's what's going on there. We lose contact with them once they go that far out, but we get radio back that, hey, we spotted the enemy fleet. And we have a report up here. Search planes from Able, airborne underway. And then somewhere down in here, yeah, our scouts identify, report. It was yellow at first because we weren't sure. Of course, in this scenario, we know what we're looking for, but our scouts report enemy surface force, give us bearing, range, and then Yorktown sounds general quarters, ready for battle. Now to build our strike package to go hit the enemy, pretty straightforward. We can just click strike down here. It's going to bring up this screen, which is kind of like a more complex version of the search package. But really, once you know what all these buttons do, pretty straightforward. First off, over here, so we're developing an offensive air mission. The mission types will be naval attack. So in the full version of the game, there'll be other types of strike packages, but for the demo here, the only thing you do is a naval attack. You can choose which carrier they're going to launch from. We'll go with the Lexington since they have more aircraft available. And then the name of the ID is going to be the name the mission has, call sign. And then down here, you're going to select which aircraft you want to send. So this is totally up to you. There's lots of options. There's pros and cons of building like one big strike package with everything thrown in versus building multiple small ones. Kind of the obvious biggest thing is, one big strike package, you can put a lot of escorts with it. They're all going to hit together. And so you're going to kind of go for like the biggest impact, but also there's risk of what if they miss? What if in this case, we know where the enemy fleet is. It's pretty close. There's not much danger of our aircraft getting off course or we sending them to the wrong place because the enemy changed course, something like that. They're going to fly right over there and know exactly where they are. But that is a chance if, say, it was we're sending them further out and we didn't know exactly where the enemy fleet was, that kind of thing. There's more risk of them, one big flight, all your eggs in one basket. And then the other downside is that it's going to take longer for that strike package to take off. So all of those aircraft have to be prepped. They have to get on the deck and be launched all at around the same time, one after another. That's going to take, the bigger the package, the longer it takes for them to take off, that kind of thing. Versus a small strike package can get up there and launch quickly, is a little more flexible. For our purposes, we'll just build out, say, 6 dive bombers from each squadron and 6 torpedo bombers. Sure, why not? And then also we'll throw in 9 of our fighters as escorts. So then that ends up being Total of 27 aircraft, a lot, really big strike package, but just for demonstration here. And then if we look over here, this is building out how much time it's going to take. So when they're going to be prepped, when they're going to take off, how many bombs and stuff they're going to take, and what all the aircraft in the strike package are. Now we need to pick our target. So we click here. Now you could just pick like a spot on the map you want to send them to, but since we know exactly where the enemy is, we'll click that to just lock them onto the enemy fleet. And then it'll show the position of the target, target type, so we know all that already. And then down here, the flight plan, so we can have the set takeoff would either be as soon as possible here, or you could delay it further out if you wanted to. And you can also say a few options here. So spotting mode is going to be basically how spotting is like prepping the aircraft to take off. So if we do standard, they're going to be set into the schedule. So whatever's already planned on the schedule, they'll be worked into that. But if you do early spotting, that basically makes this mission take priority and delay other operations so that these aircraft are prepped and ready to go. And then departure mode. So normal departure, this is how they're going to take off and form up. If you do normal departure, they are all going to take off. The faster aircraft will take off last and catch up with the slower aircraft en route. And that way it's more efficient overall, but it could get disrupted if something happens in between all those aircraft taking off and then meeting up on the way to the target. Or you can do deferred departure and they'll all wait before they take off, or wait before they'll form up at the fleet and then go to the target all together, which means they'll be more cohesive, but you're going to use up more fuel while the first aircraft are flying around waiting for the last aircraft to take off. So it reduces the range of the flight. And then loadout priority, either endurance for them to fly further or offensive power for them to have more weaponry to hit harder when they get there. And then tactical orders doesn't do anything right now in the demo. And then if once we're satisfied with all this, we come over here and you can hit green light and they'll take off right now if you hit that versus having like a delayed start later. So we'll go ahead and hit that. And that mission is locked in. And then we should be able to see our aircraft getting tasked. Yeah, so we see on the Lexington. And then down here, so this thing at the bottom is showing you only one aircraft carrier at a time. So we switch it to the Lexington, and now we see, okay, we've got a whole bunch of purple here of their prepping all those aircraft. And then when it turns red, that's when they're going to start taking off. So we can see it here, and then let's go see it in 3D also. We can find Lexington. Yep, so we can see, oh, new buttons. Okay, so they are there. We want to see our flight deck operations. We can see they're maneuvering around, getting ready, and prep to take off. And then if we speed up time, we'll see them all take off and on their way to the target. Oh, getting let's see, bogeys. So we spotted some enemy aircraft on the way. So they know they're heading straight for us. We're heading straight for them. Should be a conflict in the making right there. But I'm going to pause it here, and there's not much else for you to gain from watching me play out the rest of this other than maybe some visuals. But my goal here was to get you up to speed so you could play it yourself. So I don't want to spoil it by playing out the whole thing. But with the information you have so far, you should be able to get in the game, know the basic controls, set up the missions, and get into the fight. So put in the comments, let me know how the battle goes for you. Did you win? Did you get sunk? Did you find the Japanese and sink them? I'm excited to play more of this game. The full version, of course, will have submarines. It'll have more types of aircraft, more types of ships, more missions, tons more missions, and more options like being able to take direct control of aircraft and anti-aircraft guns and stuff like that during the mission if you so choose. or you can play it hyper realistic where you're like just the admiral on the bridge, like looking at the map and not being able to see anything else than what a real admiral would have known at the time, which could be a really immersive way to play. But also, of course, it's fun to be able to jump out here and see all the aircraft flying around in the nice, pretty graphics. All right, so thanks for watching. I hope you found this useful, and be sure you hit subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Bye.